We are coming up on just about 4 months till opening day and Iowa's 2025 college football season. We appreciate you stopping by here at the Voice of College Football. We will track down the latest concerning the Iowa football program as we always do and take your comments and questions. And this is a great time to serve up those comments and questions because basically you produce the show just about every week, but especially on a bit of a May slumber week. We got Corey Brad here, of course, from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Hey, Corey.
Mark, good to see you. It's May. I know it's never stops around these parts, but I feel like we finally hit a bit of a reprieve. April was as wild as I've ever experienced it, at least in Hawkeye Nation. Part of that is, of course, the men's basketball coaching change, but just with the portal. And then, the coaching change, it's not just about a coaching change. You have all the transfer portal additions because you basically lose your whole team. You got visits, all that stuff. And then football was as active in the portal as I think I'd have to go back, probably as much as active as we've ever seen, which, you just expect that now with schools to continue to increase portal activity. But we had one more addition here, I think, since we last talked. So excited to talk about another offensive lineman. And there's going to be people that are really heaping praise on George Barnett. He's done a nice job on the recruiting trail at his position. So another portal ad, and sounds like I was probably set now. I don't know that there's really room for anyone else via the portal.
We actually had huge recruiting news come down just about 90 minutes ago. The number one player in all of high school football and also the number one offensive tackle. So we could play this against what was transpiring at Iowa, let's see, 2 years ago at this time, with, of course, Caden Proctor, arguably the number one player, the number one offensive tackle for sure, making his choice for Iowa initially. But Jackson Cantwell out of Missouri has chosen to go to Miami, at least for now. And apparently his NIL paycheck is going to come in around $2 million per.
$2 million per?
Yes.
So he could potentially make $8 million to $10 million?
He could. But if he's making $10 million, then they didn't get the guy that they paid for if he's playing past 3 years.
Well,
and certainly, yeah.
But with this day and age of NIL, he's a really good college player, but his draft stock is just average.
Yeah.
Maybe he does stick around and play for $8 million. That's crazy money for an offensive lineman.
Crazy money. And again, number one player in the country out of Missouri.
And who was he committed to someone else initially?
No.
Okay. Who was it that just last week decommitted? Who was one of the top prospects in? Was he 26?
USC got a big decommitment of somebody, and I don't know that he flipped. I think he just decommitted. Ohio State had a decommitment recently as well.
Yeah, and this kid at Iowa State, who was actually a Dowling grad, so shout out Caitlin Clark and the Clark family. He's an interesting one because he's got 3 years left. We're talking about George, I think it's pronounced Nahas. All these guys named George now are coming in to play offensive line for Iowa. You got Bryce George from Ferris State, and you got George Nahas. So I could be butchering his name, Mark. I apologize. I do know that he played right tackle at Dowling, pretty much exclusively, at least his senior year. And it's a really good level of football. It's Iowa football, but there's a lot of good players that come out of the state. And I don't know, as far as size-wise, he's transferred from Iowa State. So he was listed at like 6'4", 300 pounds at Iowa State. And, again, without being an offensive lineman, it's hard for me to really see right where I was at with trying to identify talent, especially this kind of talent, where it is a transfer portal kid. He's coming in off scholarship. He's not going to be, my understanding is he's coming in as a walk-on as he was at Iowa State. I don't know. He's projected as an interior guy, but he's got good size for an interior guy and a walk-on. And Iowa, it's not like Iowa hasn't had walk-ons succeed over the course of KIRK's time at Iowa. So, they need depth there as much as they can get. They lose guys in the NFL. We just saw Mason Richmond signed his rookie contract with the Seahawks. I have not heard about Colby. Perhaps he signed as well, and I just missed it. But hey, Kirk said at his press conference after the final spring practice was up that there were a couple spots up for grabs, and guys like Bryce George, I think he expects Bryce to grab one of those, but there's still a lot of work to do this camp up front.
You wonder what the incentive for a player like this is. This guy's a walk-on. He obviously wants to stay close to home. He's not necessarily, I'm sure he's looking for playing time, of course, but it's not like that's the obvious path. It's not like he went from Iowa State to an FCS school.
Yeah, and I've not, full disclosure, I've not yet spoken with George. Would love to. Central Iowa kid. He's probably, I suppose I could track him down here in Ames since he's here. But my guess is maybe Iowa didn't have room for him before. And with all the guys that have left and now I don't know that Iowa's backpedaling on the trying to trim the roster down thing, but like that is still a thing. Like there's certainly less clarity now about whether Iowa's going to have to hit that scholarship limit number by the time we hit July. So, they may be able to take a few guys either back or guys that they didn't have room for previously. Again, as a non-scholarship guy, my understanding, according to Iowa State, their bio for George, his dad was a good baseball player for Iowa back in the day, and he actually ended up with the Braves organization. Now, to what extent did he succeed with Atlanta? I have no idea, but he's got the Iowa Hawkeye roots, so I'm not shocked by it. Also, I don't know that we've talked about this. Did we talk about Cade Borid here a couple of weeks ago after the spring practice?
I remember that name.
So Cade Borid is the young man who is originally from Southeast Polk, ended up going to North Dakota. He was really good at North Dakota, I believe he won some all-conference honors and started at center in 2023, was Missouri Valley Conference all-newcomer of the year, maybe he was all-newcomer team, but he was really good in 2 years at North Dakota, just one playing. Transfers to Iowa, then gets the offseason OWI. And I've not confirmed this through Iowa, but let me just double check. I don't believe he's on the roster anymore. This got brought up again. We just didn't get a chance to ask Kirk this after, but yeah, I'm scrolling through the roster. Of course, you want to look for guys maybe having a number change, but yeah, he is not listed on the current roster. So very unfortunate. I don't know. I know he was, if I'm not mistaken, Kirk released a statement after he got arrested, basically said he'd be suspended. But you hope those guys like that recover and come back and compete. And he was a prospect they liked. Again, I don't think he was on scholarship when he got here, but he was, all Missouri Valley Conference newcomer team in 1 year at one real year at North Dakota. That's the best FCS conference in the country. So that is frustrating, but I thought we should mention that as well, because there's another guy who was an interior prospect, presumably gone. So that may be part of the reason why they wanted to nab one more guy and a non-scholarship player for the inside of that line.
Jackson's here. Chevy Oda is asking, where does Kirk rank all-time in Iowa football coaching history? We'll address some of that here in just a minute. And others in the chat, we do appreciate you being here. Leave those comments and questions. We appreciate your contributions as well. When is the next time you're live, Corey?
Boy, I don't know when the next time I'm live. It'll be this month, I believe. I'd have to look back at the schedule. It should be this month. And we'll have more interviews here coming up soon. We've got Ferris State transfer Bryce George coming up next on our podcast. We've had interviews here in the last month with Iowa women's basketball newcomer Chit Chat Wright. We had Ben McCollum on last week. We get Bryce George here this week. So, yeah, we're pushing out the interviews now in the off season.
So to address the question there, not specifically, because we can do that in a minute, I did release my off-season coaches rankings that I've been doing for who knows how long, where I rank every coach in the country in the power conferences. And so this is how it turned out. So you can check out those live streams. We did a number of live streams where we worked it in. And then we also did a final top 30 video. So I've got Kirk Ferentz at number 24 in the nation. And right out of the gate, I did preface this by saying I did not give this one final review. I would rank Kirk ahead of Dave Doran. I would make a switch there.
That was the one I was going to bring up, like
Dave
Doran.
Jump on that?
Well, I don't know. I'm not an ACC expert, but I don't know much about Dave Doran. But
he's 40-21 in the last however many years that is.
Okay. All right. And Kirk is probably about the same, right? If not, maybe a little bit better.
Maybe.
And he's playing in he's coaching in a better conference. Yep. They were 6-7. North Carolina State was 6-7 last year.
Yeah, they lost to East Carolina.
Yeah. Good old Pirates.
Well, I'm not going too heavily for tenured coaches based on one season's results. I'm not going to punish someone.
I'm guessing that ranking of Matt Rule at 27 got under some Nebraska Husker skin, right?
Well, it shouldn't. He's not proven to be any better than that.
Yeah. Nebraska fans don't care about what's been proven, Mark. Well, they do care about what's been proven 30, 40 years ago. But beyond that, they really don't care what's been proven currently.
Yeah, I would move Kirk ahead of Dave Doran, so at least up to number 23, and Doran even probably down a few spots beyond that.
And I apologize if there's any Nebraska fans in the chat. I'm wearing Husker red today. So,
Minnie's here, if she's still here.
Okay. All right. Apologies.
So we've got at least one Husker.
All in good fun, right, Mark?
Of course. All in good fun. We'll see if any Iowa faithful have an issue with Kirk being ranked at number 23.
Now, what does the 32-23 at the beginning represent?
So those are the last two rankings. So 2 years ago, off-season 2023, number 32, and then up to 23 last year.
Okay. And so you had, where is, let's see, Rhett Lashley. Was he not a head coach before this past year?
He was in the group of 5 because SMU was.
So you're only ranking Power 5.
Yes, I did rank the group of 5. I didn't do it this year. My workload, we have reduced my workload considerably. But yeah, I did a group of 5 last year.
I'm trying to figure out why you didn't come out with a breaking news. Like in the past, when Iowa's gotten a commitment, you'll go out there and on the Iowa channel, you will go like breaking news, Iowa lands such as. I don't know why you don't do that anymore. Like more than what you and I can reside in the same sphere for a few hours on a weekday or on a weekend. So when George Nahas committed, I'm like, where's Mark's video? I want a George Nahas breakdown, man.
I have never personally produced a video on an Iowa commit unless I did with Caden Proctor. Maybe I did.
You have done that before, and I'll
Me?
find it. Yes, you have done it. I'll find it. I'm happy to find it. I think you did it. Did you do it with Trevor Lauk?
No.
What if I find one with Trevor Lauk? Oh my goodness. Hold on a second.
No, that is clipped from our show. It has to be. I did not do a Trevor Lauk. I don't even know who Trevor Lauk is. I recall the name.
What's this?
What are we looking at here? I'm on a different tab. While Hawkeye Nation waits on the decision announcement of one Caden Proctor, nothing wrong with getting another top line offensive tackle. Welcome to Voice of College Football.
Oh, I threw that in there,
Hawkeyes, right here at Voice of College Football. Please hit the like button, subscribe, join us every Tuesday at 4:30 Central Time.
Go back
Hawkeyes Live with Corey Breda from the Hawkeye of the Storm. I'm promoting you right out of the gate.
I told you. See, I got that in burned in my mind because it was such a special day. How many views did that get?
I think I did that once.
Yeah, I got about almost 1,000 views. Yeah. Okay.
So I did that once. Yeah,
but
my coverage of Iowa football could not compare. So I don't even know why I did it then. I was just steaming hard, just rolling anything. At one point, I was checking the commitment wire like 3 times a day, and anytime somebody to a major school, I would jump on it.
By the way, Trevor Lauck, shout out Trevor Lauck. He's a 4-star recruit. And he may be Iowa. He may be a starter this year for Iowa. And I don't know now that Bryce George is coming in where Trevor Lauck fits in. But, with all due respect to Trevor Lauck, shout out Indiana Pacers. I know he's a big Pacer fan, and Pacers are looking good in the playoffs. I know you couldn't care less about the NBA. So,
yeah, and you're making it difficult for us to clip off segments
I
because
understand.
you started down the KIRK road.
Yeah.
How does number 23 strike you?
Honestly, I'm a little surprised. So you had him at 32 last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
No, I had him at 23 last year after
did.
the good 2024, 23.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think any program ranking, coaching ranking for Iowa under KIRK is going to, until he retires, is likely to remain anywhere between 20 and 35. Like, there's just such a small window in there where he's either going to slide out of or rise above. And so, yeah, 23. I probably would have had him in the 25 range without even delving into it myself. Cody's got a good question in the chat for you, Mark. That's
Okay.
totally a Mark Rogers question. Now that's a clip right there. Let's add that to the clip in the gauntlet for the week.
Oh, wow. Mark, what would KIRK's career look like had he been Ohio State's coach since 1999? How many natties?
Wow. Isn't that a fascinating question?
It is a fascinating question because I think a lot of people, including myself, had a lot more respect. Not that I have lacked in respect for Kirk Ferentz, but in regards to rating his ability, I once rated him a top 10 coach in the country.
I think a lot of people did. He was on the docket for, just like Hayden Fry was for a period of time. Kirk was one of the hottest names out there for other head coaching jobs, blue blood head coaching jobs, and NFL jobs, head coaching jobs. And he turns them down. I mean, I go back to 2002 to 2004, 5, Mark, and even into the 2008 to 9. I remember some of those conversations being had. But early 2000s, Kirk was still one of the hottest names out there.
It would be fascinating to have seen not only what the success would have looked like, but how much differently he would have coached with different types of players.
Yeah, that's what that's the first thing I think of is, like, he's done it at Iowa a certain way. And he says he has said publicly a number of times, he's done it this way because he believes this is the way you have to do it at Iowa. He has said that. Now, Iowa fans don't like hearing that usually. But the reality is, if he was somewhere else, like an Ohio State, the other question is, does he fit into the culture of a blue blood? Does he personally fit into that culture? I don't have an answer to that. But it is fascinating. Or what is this?
You want to go way back. This is me. I'm in Denver, I believe.
Wow.
And I am ranking my college top. Now, I put there top 5 college football coaches, but I think I had KIRK a little bit lower than that. But
what year was this?
This was 13 years ago. This is just the birth of the channel right there. 2011. So this is 2009. Obviously, they won the Orange Bowl. So 2010. How good were they in?
They were a disappointment. They were 8-5, and they were a disappointment.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, they played like Missouri.
Yeah, they beat a good Missouri team. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many views did that get, Mark?
304.
Okay. Do you remember when your channel first got that big? Do you remember what your first big video was?
No.
You don't?
I'm still waiting for it.
Aren't we all, though? Aren't we all, Mark?
Depends what you mean by big. I got a Lincoln Riley video at 70,000.
Is that the one where he's going like this?
Yeah.
Oh, I just love that one.
I got a Jimbo Fisher that needs to be reinstated, that some shenanigans went on, and that got pulled down. That was at like 65,000.
I wonder how that guy's doing.
Yeah, Jimbo Fisher just raking in all the money from his.
No, I was talking about
deal.
the moron that deleted it off your channel.
Yes.
with all due respect. But I mean, I'm not. If you're gonna pull crap like that, then yeah, you are a moron, right? I mean,
Well, since this is an Iowa show and you're the Iowa guy, let's turn that. And we're just shooting the breeze, folks. If you got a question, please leave it. I don't have a great indicate. I will answer that question about Kirk as saying I'm not going to make some crazy prediction that he would have done something egregiously better or worse. I got to think that he's an excellent football coach and he would have ran the program extremely well and done a great job. And he actually might have led the program very similar to what Jim Tressel did because they're kind of similar.
yeah.
Jim Tressel was pretty conservative.
Yep.
Even though he had loads of talent.
Jim Tressel had a sweater on every game, right?
And a tie.
And a tie.
That's why PJ Fleck dresses like that.
Yeah.
Because he worked for Jim Tressel.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be curious. And I believe there was weren't there rumblings about Kirk to Michigan at one point?
Oh, could you imagine?
No, not now. But I'm trying to think, what year would that have been?
Well, they lost their head coach Lloyd Carr after the 2007 season.
So that was probably when those talks were. I mean, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, they were going after, not necessarily like I'm saying they were going after this guy more than Kirk, but he was in the mix with Les Miles, who won the national championship that year.
And was that when
they ended up with Rich Rod?
I was going to say they hired Rich Rod, and then they wouldn't see if I remember my Michigan history very well. It was Rich Rod, then it was Brady Hoke.
Yeah, so Rich Rod was only there 3 seasons.
And then how long was Brady Hoke there?
Brady Hoke would have been 2011 through 14 or 2010. So Rich Rod would have been 08, 9, and 10. Brady Hoke 11 through 14, 4 seasons.
Okay, as soon as you're done with this Kirk topic, I do have a exercise we can do. Since we're out of spring, we really haven't talked. We don't get a post-spring depth chart, right? We get a pre-spring depth chart. Kirk has basically said it means nothing. So I have an idea that I didn't run by you before the show, but we can easily do this on the fly if you'd like. Why don't we don't have to run through a depth chart that they've shown us. We don't have to put it up on the screen. But why don't we run through position by position, and I will give you my projected starters, where I project things to play out by the end of August. I think people would like to hear that at this point.
I would as well. So we will do that as soon as you answer the question that you posed to me, because this being the Iowa channel, and you being at the end. So if nobody knows this, I don't know how long we've been on this Iowa channel. I'd have to go back and look at the dates, but obviously Corey and I have done 196 episodes. So that's pushing 4 years. So Corey was just launching his channel. We started this show. And so at what point do you believe that you got the runway and took off on your channel?
That's a good question too. I don't know. I know it was long after I started doing the post-game show on your Iowa channel, because that was what we talked about. I know when we initially started collaborating was I wanted to help you build this channel to 1,000. I mean, I basically didn't do much of anything on my channel until we hit 1,000 on here. Trying to think if did we even, I don't think we, what am I trying to say here? Simulcast. I don't think we simulcasted to mine until maybe year 2, I believe.
Probably.
And so, yeah, I mean, I don't remember the first big video or I think just getting Don Patterson on. I mean, I think just having Don a part of this brand, so early, I think that was the biggest. If you want to talk about breaks, that was the biggest break, to get someone as refreshing as Don and as kind of a man as Don and great of a coach, personality, and he just loves Iowa football. I mean, I've been saying that since he started, and so that would be what I would point to. And then I come back to the same things whenever someone asks me about the platform, its growth, its success. Don Patterson, Gary Close, Gasheen Alexander, lifeblood of the show. And without those three, and obviously I appreciate the help that you provided here early in the process as well. But I mean, you got to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are, in my opinion, at least for what I'm trying to do in a niche type of situation. So it's been a fun journey.
Absolutely. So while you are starting down the depth chart and your projections on starters, I will hunt for a graphic to complement you.
Okay.
And before we start on that, of course, I just had to post this because anytime PJ Flex brought up and Erica's around, she's going to take her shots at my guy, PJ.
Hey, if you're the nation's best used car salesman, you're probably very wealthy and very successful. So say what you want about used car salesmen, but think about that. I mean, there's a lot of really successful used car dealerships out there. But anyways.
By the way, I've got PJ at 21.
Yeah. Yeah. I probably disagree with you on that. I don't know what he's done at Minnesota to place him anywhere above KIRK. I just explain it to me. Explain that one to me.
It's more difficult to win
zero
there.
sense.
It's more difficult to win there.
How is it more difficult to win there? Explain that.
Who else has done better than PJ Fleck? He is outdistanced anybody.
Iowa's had two coaches in like 45 years. So it's a worthless comparison to make.
No, I'm saying who at Minnesota has outcoached PJ Fleck? Nobody.
That doesn't mean
since I've been watching football. We're going back to the late 70s. He has been their best coach.
That doesn't mean it's a harder place to win than Iowa. That just means they've had
been.
Well, maybe Iowa's just done better with its two head coaches. Like you strike gold on two coaches in 45 years. I don't really know that I'm just not convinced that Minnesota's a more difficult. They have a bigger market in Minneapolis to recruit from. Maybe it's not as fertile as Chicagoland, but Iowa's competitive, having to compete with all the other Big Ten teams for Chicago. It's not like Iowa dominates Chicagoland. Yeah, I don't buy that. I don't buy that it's harder to win at Minnesota than it is in Iowa City. No way.
Okay. Well, you can either take the evidence that I just brought to the table, or to your point, you can take it the other end of the spectrum and say, unless Ohio State really makes a mistake at head coach, they've had 5 straight that have basically just. So since World War II, you could think, does it matter who they hire, or they just hire really well? Which is
saying, Mark, you and I, like with a straight face, you can't sit here and say that Iowa, like PJ Fleck would do better at Iowa than KIRK would.
Well, I don't know.
Or yeah, you don't know, but I'm just saying, like, they could Iowa could easily hire somebody tomorrow and he fail miserably, and Iowa be a bottom feeder team in this conference easily. They're not like some program that's just set up for success. And that's illustrated by the lack of population, the struggle, at least for a time, with NIL. I think football's in a better place now than it ever has been, certainly. I mentioned the recruiting disadvantages. There's no pro sports team, which could be an advantage, but I think in large part, overall, it's probably a disadvantage just because of market. It's an indicator of market size and fan base, etc. So I don't know. I'm probably not going to be able to argue that with evidence because, like I said, you have two coaches over the course of, literally 45 years, 46 years, I guess now, right? 1979. But yeah, I think if KIRK went to Minnesota, he would have had the same success that he's had at Iowa. And my guess is if PJ was at Iowa, he'd have probably about the same success that he had at Minnesota. So maybe they're even, but I guess what I'm saying is I give the tiebreaker on the job to Minnesota, and he has had less relative success. Like, how many times have we talked about his inability to win a horrendously weak West division? At least KIRK was able to win the West a few times. I mean, think about that. How long has PJ been at Minnesota? Was never able to win that horrendous West division. Think about all the athletes he had. Rashad Bateman. You got the Chris Ottman-Bell. You got the Johnson kid. You got all those running backs, and they were never able to get to Indy. No, I know you're a big PJ Fleck homer and you want to grease his bald head, but I can't deal with the lack of success relative to the athlete and in comparison to the type of job, the level of job when you compare it to Iowa.
Kirk Ferentz is basically doing the same job that Hayden Fry did in regards to he's succeeding pretty much at the same level as Hayden Fry. And somebody mentioned Glenn Mason in the chat. If you look at Glenn Mason's record, it's not PJ Fleck's record. It's a comparison to make, but PJ Fleck has done much better. He's not lost a bowl game. He's 7-0 in the postseason.
He doesn't play in any games. Nobody cares.
He doesn't play in any games.
Mark.
He's playing in bowl games.
Nobody cares. You and I both know nobody cares. You and I both know that.
I understand that, but they're playing bowl games, and
okay, yeah,
and he's playing in postseason games. Anyway, his record though is a larger separation. If you want to break a tie, and again, if I'm putting a coach at number 21 and another coach at number 23, let's understand that's razor
splitting
close.
Hairs. Yes,
that. If you compare him to his predecessors at the university, he's better. So if Minnesota couldn't hire a coach,
right,
then...
But it is apples to oranges because they're two different jobs. So...
They're two different comparable jobs, though. It's not like one of them's at Georgia and one's at Northwestern.
If they're two comparable jobs, who has had more success, Kirk or PJ?
Kirk's had more opportunity to have success.
Huh?
He's been there for 25 years. PJ's been there for 6 or 7.
Give me since PJ's been there. Let's just compare. Let's compare equal years. Let's just compare same years. That's all we got to do.
Kirk's not gone 11-2 since PJ's been at Minnesota.
Well, he's went what 10-2 2 or 3 times. Okay, so what? What's your point? He was played in the same. He played in this not just the same conference, the same division as PJ Fleck in Minnesota. Every single year in Minnesota. How many times has Minnesota beaten Iowa? Once, twice. One of them was on the horrendous Cooper DeJean fair catch call, right?
Yeah, but they are playing basically the same competition, and Minnesota's fared similar to Iowa.
Without division. I mean, how much are we placing? You're placing emphasis on bowl games. I guess I'm placing more emphasis on a team's ability to make it to the Big Ten championship game, win their division, or win a conference. Iowa hasn't won a conference, but they've certainly won their division, and Minnesota has not.
Yeah, I think that again, it makes it difficult because the coach at Iowa has been there for so long, and then his predecessor as well, to see, okay, what do guys do at Iowa?
Sure. But it's not hard to compare like years. If we're going to agree that they're comparable job, let's just compare like years. And unless you just don't want to agree on how we're going to gauge success, because you're apparently placing more emphasis on bowl wins than you are on division wins.
So
I'm doing the opposite.
The last point that I will make is that if you take Kirk Ferentz's record against PJ Fleck's record during the same time frame, I think Kirk's got a slightly better record. It's not by much.
Yep.
But he obviously had his program rolling for 20 years while PJ had to take over a failing program.
Sure.
A coach gets fired because he's not doing well. So PJ had to take over a bad program.
Well, I think he's been given the opportunity to establish himself now in year 8 or whatever he is.
Yeah.
What year is he in? Do you know?
I think this would be his 7th year. 2018 was his first year. 2017. Okay. Either 17 or 18. Maybe 17. I think this would be.
It was Tracy Claeys before him, wasn't it?
We had this discussion recently. Yeah, Jerry Kill had to give it up, and then it was Jerry Kill did fairly well there in a short
he did
period of time.
Yeah. He's just had so many health problems. He retired finally, didn't he?
Yeah, he went to New Mexico State and did a great job, but then he had to retire again, step down. I just think of Iowa also as being a more fertile high school recruiting state than
Then
Minnesota.
Minnesota with Minneapolis with the
No,
Twin Cities.
aren't there better players come out of Iowa?
Man, I guess I'm not a national recruiting expert. I'd love to be able to compare Minnesota and
Well, maybe
Iowa.
it's not even worth debating. It's probably fairly close.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised. But I suppose once you get into the northern half of Minnesota, there's not much up there, is my guess. Iowa does have a knack of producing some small town kids from these obscure Western Iowa schools that turn into, Cooper DeJeans and Reese Vanderzees and Zach Lutmers. So I'll give you that.
Okay.
Part of that's development, right?
Yeah, I know I'm arguing in the wrong show, the wrong channel.
That's right. That's why I'm
fan
here. That's why I'm here. So
okay. I would, and part of this ranking came down to who would I want running my program right this second toward the future.
Sure. Oh, well, then, hey, to me, that's a different discussion. If that's part of the criteria, then I might be willing to agree with your ranking at that point, just because of age.
Yeah, Kirk Ferentz has a much better legacy and resume than PJ Fleck. It's not even close. I'm not ranking their resumes.
Yeah.
All right. Are we going to start with the Iowa depth chart on
Sure.
the offensive side?
Yeah, let's run through the offense. Where do you want to start?
Let's start at quarterback.
Well, this one should be easy. I won't bore people with my 1 through 4 or 1 through 5 or in the quarterback room 1 through 6. But I think it's safe to say if Mark Gronowski's healthy, he will be the starter. It would be a shock if he's healthy and is not the starter, barring something completely unforeseen. Now, I think the big debate, even after spring ball, is who's number 2. We've talked about Jackson Stratton. He looked better during that open spring practice, final practice of spring, than did Hank Brown or Jimmy Sullivan. But you also get Ryan Fitzgerald coming in, and you've got an interesting and intriguing guy in Jeremy Hecklinski coming in from Wake. So, yeah, as far as quarterback's concerned, Gronowski's the guy, barring something really unfortunate physically.
Somebody made a comment to one of our videos here recently, basically saying, I think that they thought that both of us were underestimating Iowa for this coming season, to say, if you put together the Mark Gronowski that we could get as a star coming in from the FCS and a drastically improved passing attack, and then a vintage Iowa defense, then what do you get? Well, if it's a vintage Iowa defense, and Mark Gronowski turns out to be a top 5 quarterback in the Big Ten, then wow.
We don't know that this is going to be a drastically improved pass offense. We just don't know that. I mean, do I want to think it is? Yeah, sure. The reality, though, is that the defense did take a step back last year, and I have faith in Phil Parker, but those are pretty general questions. How good is the defense going to be? How good is the offense going to be? Right? Those are still question marks.
Just to clarify and to give you this side of the argument, as Cheviota is pointing out, Kirk is 69-32 since PJ Fleck took over at Minnesota, and PJ is 56-39.
Okay.
So PJ's 17 games over 500, and Kirk is 37 games over 500. So it's not a blowout, but it's not close. It's not debatable.
So we want to move to running back, Mark?
Sure.
That's probably a more difficult one to identify a clear number 1, and I was not afraid to go running back by committee. I'll be honest, people can go back and look at my record. I did not expect Caleb Johnson to have the year he had last year. I don't think people outside the program or within the program expected him to have the year that he had last year. At some point, maybe they did, but let's not forget he was suspended for, I think he missed, was it late in fall camp? Or I don't know when it was. He missed a day, and it sounds like it was just he went off and did some Powerade shot for his NIL initiative and basically skipped practice and got suspended, and was not a good look. But then he ends up having almost a Heisman level year at running back. If it's not for Ashton Genty, he'd have been the running back everybody's talking about. So, yeah, big shoes to fill in there. And I thought Jazz Patterson looked really good, but frankly, Mark, how many years have we? Jazz Patterson's a redshirt junior. This is year 4. I feel like I say that every year about Jazz. Like, I always like what I see in practice. He hits hard. He runs with authority. He hits hard. Maybe not the most patient, but to me, he's the type of guy that if I don't know where his hands are, but you'd love to have someone like that as a third down back. Short yardage situations, but can come out of the backfield and pick up short yards in the passing game. But I think it'll be him and Kamari that'll share that load. It sounds like Terrell Washington Jr. is back in the running back room basically exclusively. Remember, he was running a lot at receiver last year. So those two guys together, depth again. I guess we don't have to make this a depth show, but really impressed with Nate McNeil. He was the kid that a lot of people were kind of eyeing during final spring practice. True freshman running back out of Florida, and another Liddell Betts recruit. So obviously a different era now, the new running backs coach, but I think they're sound there at the top with 1 and 2 at a minimum. And I like Xavier Williams too. Tree trunks for legs. The future is bright in that room, assuming they get the same type of development they had under Liddell.
When I think of Jazz Patterson, I think of the second half against Iowa State on the road.
Yeah, if it's not for Jazz Patterson, they probably don't win that game. I was just reflecting on that one the other day. Won that game by 7 and really struggled offensively just in entire passing game struggled. That was a Cade game. He was healthy in that game, or marginally healthy. So I guess we can move to tight end. You lose Gavin Hoffman, but again, you bring back two really experienced guys. Gavin Hoffman was lost this spring. They lose Luke Lachey from last season. Obviously, he's the biggest one. Also lost Johnny Pascuzzi, who, by the way, has jumped now from, I think he went to Tulane with Brendan Sullivan. So Pascuzzi transferred to West Virginia in December. And then this spring, he was right back in the portal and now is with Brendan Sullivan at Tulane. So best of wishes to the Kansas City native, who was a good tight end for Iowa, but they stay healthy. A string as a senior. Zach Ortworth, time has flown by with both these guys. I mean, I remember talking to Addison when he committed. I posted a video with myself and him on, I think the day after, well, maybe it was later on, but it was from that open spring practice here a few weeks ago. And I asked Addison, like, man, I remember when I interviewed you. How does it feel now? 3 years have flown by and you're in year 4. And he agrees. Time has just flown by, I'm sure, faster for him. But those two guys, I mean, I think have a chance to be really good. I think Zach Ortworth has shown himself to be maybe more of a deep passing threat at tight end. You just wonder how much involvement that position will have with this new Tim Lester offense. It took a step back last year as far as volume. And then Hayden Large is working more at tight end. I think we're going to see less fullback with him. I think the room's really healthy, really strong. They're going to get more people in. They get LeVar Woods' kid in. They get the 4-star from up in Clear Lake. They'll get him in this summer. And Michael Burt is a promising young kid from Omaha. So, health is always going to be important because I think, again, they're just like running back. They're top 2 or the clear top 2 at this point.
All right. We can move it out to wide receiver. The best wide receiver core at Iowa for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably I hesitate to say this because people love to throw this stuff out and then it never comes to fruition. On paper, it's the deepest room that we've seen at Iowa since probably the early 2010s. I mean, I was thinking about this after you and I talked about the Smith-Marset, Brandon Smith era. That was a good group at the top, but it wasn't very deep. And I think they got a chance of being deep this year. Now, what does the top end look like? Can the top end be as good as Smith-Marset Smith were? I don't know. They still weren't, incredibly productive in that offense, but that's the key in that Brian Ferentz offense. So Reese Vanderzee struggled to stay healthy last year, had the huge game against Miami, Ohio, week 1, or Illinois State, whoever that was they played. And then I think Jacob Gill's the best receiver on the team. He's a redshirt senior. Seth Anderson's a redshirt senior. He's in his final year. Sam Phillips is a redshirt senior. He transfers in from Chattanooga. In my opinion, those should be your top 4. No questions asked. Like, if they all pan out, and it's on them, right? I'm not going to, if Tim Lester and John Budmeyer end up going with a different, top 4, so be it. And the only reason I don't go with Gill, Anderson, and Phillips is because I think they still want to have some height at the X spot. So, they may be flexible with guys like Phillips and Anderson, but Reese Vanderzee gives them that 6'4", 6'5" frame they like in the next guy. So I think those are your top 4. And then, yeah, like there's exciting prospects behind him: Dayton Howard, Caden Weegan, KJ Parker. And I'm probably missing someone else that somebody will yell at me for later. Who am I missing? I feel like I'm missing somebody obvious. Yeah, I guess that's probably it. Jarrett Bowie. Jarrett Bowie would be one. He missed a lot of the spring, unfortunately. So I you kind of have a bad feeling now. He's in his sophomore year. You kind of feel like he's going to be a bit behind the 8 ball, so to speak. They switched Alex Mota to DB. Is there anyone else that I'm missing? I don't think so. But that's a pretty, like I said, that room. Mark has a chance to maybe be, 6, 7, 8 deep. I don't know how feasible that is, honestly. I mean, we've heard good things about everybody. I just look at the production that we got from Sam Phillips, albeit FCS level. Production you got from Seth Anderson, he's finally healthy for spring. The early flash in the pan that was Vander Zee, and then the steady Eddie that Jacob Gill is. And then you just like, wow, the speed of Caden Weegan, if he can just develop his – I mean, I don't know what aspect of his game is behind in Iowa's eyes, if it's route running, if it's pass catching. But the dude is a really good athlete and obviously electric when he gets the ball in his hands. So they got a chance to be really deep there. But I think that's your top 4.
Well, I think until somebody gets hurt, you're obviously only relying on 3, but you would like to have, let's say, 5 that you feel comfortable that can play.
Right now, I don't know that they'd be comfortable, but I look at that, and I think number 5 would probably be Weegan. I just don't know how you leave him off the top. I mean, he's, return specialist of the year nationally. And then, like I said, you got a couple of young guys, Howard, Parker, Bowie, who will compete as well because injuries are going to happen.
So is it fair to say that the offensive line, after having a down 3 or 4 years, has been better the last 2?
It's been better the last 2. Obviously, took a big step forward last year. Still think they can improve in pass pro. I think Bryce George is really going to help that. I think he'll be their starting left tackle, assuming Jennings Dunker's healthy. That's probably the biggest health story to follow this offseason. He and Bowie, assuming and Gronowski, of course. Assuming Dunker's healthy, he's your right tackle. So you got your bookends. Logan Jones is your center. Bo Stevens is one of your guards. They got him listed here at left guard. So I'm assuming he'll probably remain there, but I think he's probably going to be flexible. And then, who takes that last spot? Could it be a guy like Cade Pieper, who's a redshirt sophomore? Could it be a guy like this kid from Iowa State that just transferred over, George Nahas? Cale Winter, Trevor Lauk, we mentioned him. I think he's probably more of a tackle. Jack Dotzler is definitely a tackle, so he'd be a guy you just want to develop for depth. Cannon Leonard, same thing. Michael Maslinski's finally healthy. There's a guy, redshirt senior, who stuck around, has hardly been on the field his entire career, was a really talented and hyped up prospect out of the state of Florida when Iowa got him. I think he picked Iowa over Michigan State and a couple other solid schools. Finally healthy. Wouldn't it be a cool story if he could emerge and give them spot minutes or spot snaps at right or left guard? But assuming Bryce George gets there as health and everybody stays healthy, I think they're in a pretty good position. The difference is they're just going to be less deep. Like, I don't know, after your top 5 or 6, I don't know at that point. So, receiver, they could be 7 or 8 deep. Offensive line, I think it's more important to be 7 or 8 deep. So I think, you'd rather be 7 or 8 deep up there than at receiver. But they got a lot of people working at that, and they'll get, like I said, George in here this month. Both Georges.
Our buddy Seth is saying that Iowa had a top 10 offensive line in the country last year.
Well, how do you rate that? I mean, I'm sure Fantasy Football or whatever that is, Pro Football Focus, they rated Iowa top 10. I'm guessing that's what he's referring to. Caleb Johnson got a lot of yards behind that offensive line mark. But I also think if you look at some of the past pro numbers, not as good. If they were as dominant of an offensive line as that number would make them out to be, then why didn't Mason Richmond, who is a 4-year left tackle, and Connor Colby get drafted higher than the 7th round? Is that a fair question, Mark?
It's a fair question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can only go based on what I know about offensive line play, which isn't much, but logic would tell me that if that line was as dominant as we're making them out to be, that their best players would have been drafted higher. But hey, maybe that's just how good Logan Jones and Jennings Dunker are. Then that's a great problem to have. You get those two back. And Seth, I already mentioned Cade. If you missed the first part of the show, Cade Board is not on the team anymore. I don't know if you're looking at Cale Winter, confusing him, but okay, I see Doc P's question. I apologize. Yeah, Doc P, we talked about Board earlier in the show. So as of right now, he's not listed on the active roster.
Unfortunately, in trying to track the best offensive lines in college football, everybody does those rankings prior to the season. So it's not a review of the season to say these were the best offensive lines. I found about 5 different articles that ranked the offensive lines prior to 2024.
And Chev Yoda, he asked the question, did pass pro look bad because of subpar QB play? Yeah, that doesn't help. But if you go watch some of those early games, especially with Cade, there were a lot of games, Mark, you saw him, where he was under duress constantly.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's a combination of both. They were better in pass offense last year for a couple of reasons. They still were not as good as they needed to be, and that's for more reasons than just quarterback and receiver play and play calling.
I may have mentioned this. I came across this maybe a month ago that Pro Football Focus has Jennings Dunker rated as the 6th best returning offensive tackle in college football.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. I've had people say, including Don Patterson in the past, that they think he's more of a natural guard. Probably in the league, he's not going to be playing tackle. So that's probably what those pundits mean. But yeah, he's been effective, and he's probably, if not their second most, or if not their most, he's their second most important offensive lineman coming back.
According to PFF, the 2nd best run blocking grade.
Yeah. Got to be better in pass pro, right? I mean, that's you're reading all about his run blocking. Okay, well, his whole line needs to be able to give the quarterback more time this year. And they're not going to have a Caleb Johnson running back there either.
Yeah, that's a good point. And give more time to a quarterback who's coming off injury.
Yep, and they've had one of those for a while now. Coming off injury. Do we want to move to defense, Mark?
Absolutely, we can do that.
Defensive line, yeah, I think probably similar to offensive line. They're just not as deep as they were last year. But people know I'm really high on Max Llewellyn. Ethan Herkett did not compete in that final spring practice. I think mainly precautionary, but he comes back as a graduate. Really helpful to get him. Aaron Graves, Jeremiah Pittman, seniors. Aaron Graves' time is now. I mean, if he's going to be an all Big Ten guy, go do it right now. He was one of the highest touted or highly regarded recruits from the Hawkeye the Storm era. Like, I've been higher on him since he committed than almost anyone. So he's been good, but I think he can be better. I think his room to grow is still there. And so, yeah, I mean, I think they're in a similar place. You bring in Jonah Pace, you bring in this kid from South Dakota State, whose name escapes me at the moment, who I've heard really good things about. What's the kid's name? Somebody will help me in the chat. Bryce Hawthorne. Heard really good things about him. So, yeah, I think they're probably in a similar place. I said offensive line's probably 5 to 6 deep. I think that's probably where defensive line is. And I think Kelvin Bell, Phil Parker would like to get that to 7 or 8. Erica asked the question about Yosei Epinesa. He didn't enroll early. So I had somebody the other day say, hey, you're sleeping on Yosei. I'm not trying to sleep on Yosei. I don't know. He's a true freshman. He didn't get here early. So maybe he'll come in and be a guy like AJ did in year one and be a nice third down option. But I've yet to there's a lot of people in front of him that have put in the work. And so, yeah, I mean, I think top 6 of Llewellyn, Graves, Pittman, Herkett, Pace, and Hawthorne, unless I'm missing someone else. And then, fill in the gaps. Can Will Hubert, as an experienced fourth-year guy, be a factor? Kenneth Merriweather, great athlete, still got to get there. Joseph Anderson, Chima Chineke, Drew Campbell, Jack Campbell's a little brother. So there's that. And then linebacker, obviously lose some really good players that went undrafted. Jay Higgins, Nick Jackson, both have contracts. Congratulations to Nick. I think he signed with the Buccaneers as an undrafted free agent. But they like Jaden Harrell. They like Carson Shire. It's all about health, right? Carson Shire's just not been able to stay healthy since he's been here. Jaden Montgomery, he's in his 4th year, never sniffed the field. He's finally on a depth chart. And then Jackson Rexroth will help at the Leo spot. They're going to run Zach Lutmer a lot, whether that be at safety or cash. You have Cohen Intringer and Xavier Wampa to kind of play with there in the back end. I know I'm kind of going to the safeties now as well. But with Phil Parker's 4.25, it'll be interesting to see just how that shapes up at cash. TJ Hall took a jump. Everything I've heard, took an early solid jump in the offseason. They needed it. They struggled at corner last year. They get Deshaun Lee back. They lose John Nestor, who, by the way, went to Minnesota. That was a weird fit, I think. But and then Jalen Watson, really promising, and I've heard good things about Rashad Godfrey. But corner, it's clear. You got to figure out who your top 2 initially are. I think it's with Nestor gone, it's Hall and Deshaun Lee, but both those guys had their struggles last year. And then just safety and cash, you just got to figure out, okay, what's the mix here between Lutmer, Intringer, Wampa, and then Jackson Rexroth kind of working as that Leo, and then I guess special teams, right? They're going to be really good special teams. They got the best returner returning, no pun intended, in Caden Weegan. You got one of the best kickers returning in Drew Stevens. Had a rough day at open spring practice, but he's going to be fine. Reese Dakin's going to be one of the best punters in the country. I have no doubt about that. Their biggest question mark, this is crazy that I'm saying this, they lie at holder and at long snapper. I thought they struggled with holding at times during the spring practice. And long snapping, they bring in this kid from Boston College because Ike Speltz has struggled at long snapper. They got a kid in Luke Elkin who's now signed his Bears contract, I believe, as a long snapper. That's hard to do, to find a role in the league right out of college as a long snapper. That's how good Luke Elkin has been. So they're going to be really good. They'll figure out holder. They'll figure out long snapper. And, special teams should be special again.
John Nestor apparently wanted to play for the 21st best head coach in college football, not the 23rd best head coach.
By the way, James says, what about Shaheed Barrows? Yeah, I missed him. Yeah, he'd be in the mix too. I don't know that he's an automatic starter, but he's in the mix. They're bringing him in, solid, productive guy from the Missouri Valley and FCS level. But I don't know that he's a starter. He's definitely got a chance to be in the top 4. But I think they got, Godfrey and Watson should be right there in the mix for those spots as well.
What if Xavier Wampa fulfills his vast potential this year?
Yeah. I mean, he and Aaron Graves, man, it's now or never. Those two guys weren't they though? I mean, those two guys were a big part, foundational pieces of that class, right, Mark? I mean, those were the dudes, sure. And they've stuck it. They haven't transferred out. They've stuck it here. They haven't gone to the NFL early. So yeah, I mean, if you get a beast up front and a beast in the back end, build around those pieces. Yeah, that'd be huge.
There it is, the rundown of the first teamers, according to Corey. All right, we are here every Tuesday, everyone. Appreciate you stopping by. Making I'm back next Tuesday. Bring a friend or 2 or 50 with you. That would be great. Why don't we just continue to build and grow this show? And then in the meantime, of course, check out Corey's work at from the Hawkeye of the Storm, which, right, of course, you're somewhat taking it easy before the big push toward the season.
That's my new off-season slogan. Just taking it easy. Take it easy. Sorry, I won't go into song on this show.
Yeah,
we'll leave that for mine.
It must be that the Eagles have stopped by the famed Iowa County Fair.
They are not the Eagles. They're just Eagles.
Oh, really?
Didn't you know that?
It's not the Eagles.
No, they are just Eagles. You'll have to look this up. Your historical country knowledge is failing you, Mark.
The Eagles have two good songs that I can think
of.
Two.
What are your 2?
New Kid in Town and I'm Already Gone.
Wow. So you don't like any of their big hits?
Hotel California is a disgusting song. I don't like it.
Okay, Hotel California.
Lion Eyes is a pretty good song.
Lion Eyes, Witchy Woman. You don't like Witchy Woman?
No.
You don't like Take It Easy? You don't like Take It to the Limit?
Take It to the Limit's okay.
Interesting.
I've long since been an Eagles detractor critic.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all right. Yeah, you pointed out a couple other songs that are okay. Like if I never heard them the rest of my life, I would be just fine.
There was a song that what's the other song that I really like that their long-haired guy does?
But they've got a couple songs in my playlist.
Peaceful Easy Feeling. You don't like that song?
No.
Love Will Keep Us Alive.
I can't think of that one.
Love will keep us alive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's a long-haired guy. What's his name? What's the long-haired guy's name in that band?
Well, it's Henley and Don Henley, and somebody's in the chat gonna pick me up on that. Glenn Fry.
No.
Joe Walsh.
No, not neither of.
No Culver's updates. I'm on a juice cleanse, Erica. I'm up to 42 hours. No food.
Timothy B. Schmidt.
Yeah, I don't know him.
He wasn't on the original band, was he?
I did know that they let anyone else sing besides Fry and Henley.
Yep. Love Will Keep Us Alive was Timothy B. Schmidt. Mark, go look it up.
So you did see them live?
No. I know people who have. They're an expensive ticket.
Okay.
I would like to see them live.
Speaking of which, my daughter's called me since we've been on here, and she has paid through the nose for some expensive tickets to the likes of like Taylor Swift, who she loves, and Justin Bieber.
Okay. Yeah. I've never went to either one of those. I'm trying to think if my wife has been to, I don't think she's been to Taylor Swift or JB either. Oh. Did you pay for those tickets or did she?
She did.
All right.
I think her first Justin Bieber, she was like 11 or something. Those were paid by someone. Maybe I did. All right, folks, make it on back next Tuesday. And in the meantime, check out Corey's videos, of course, on Iowa football and basketball. And we'll see you back here next Tuesday.